on YouTube at this moment.
Right. All right, family. Hotel. Peace, greetings to all those who have joined us for this Tuesday morning Black Conversation with Melaneyes Media. As always, we thank you for joining us. And of course, if you're not with us right now, we invite you to take a view and listen to the conversation about some of the history and what it means to us as a people. My name is Baba Ndama-Art. I'm the co-founder of Melaneyes Media. And of course, again, this is Tuesday morning Black Conversation with Melaneyes Media. Of course, we have not only myself here, my business partner, my brother, my friend, Brother Born Logic. So my brother, how you doing today?
I'm great, Baba Ndar. Peace and blessings to the family that's joining us, whether it's on Zoom or whether it's on YouTube. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Once again, we want to do these Tuesday morning conversations on a regular basis. So you can subscribe and then be able to watch all of the past ones and then catch you up to speed.
No doubt. Well, brother, I guess we can jump right into this because, last week, I think we had a great conversation. We talked about Freeman's Savings Bank. Really, we was highlighting, of course, racism in the financial sector of America when it came to Black people and, of course, banking and wealth development. Of course, this week, we wanted to really come from a different perspective and I think share some history and insight into something that has taken place in our history, but also maybe a blueprint for something that we really need to look at in the future. I wanted to kind of start off and then I want you to, of course, chime in, brother, and share your input and your insight into this. We want to just talk about Capital Savings Bank. Capital Savings Bank was founded October the 17th, 1888. It was the first bank organized and operated by African Americans. Of course, it was founded in Washington, D.C. And of course, the power of the, Capital Savings Bank and other Black-owned banks, it helped really to stimulate Black entrepreneurship by offering loans to Black-owned businesses and landowners when white-owned banks refused or would not offer the loans. So, and I'm gonna share this one, and just to say that early on, African Americans realized the necessity of accumulating wealth and the benefits of collective financial security, which I think is important to acknowledge that we understood that we had to come together as a people in order to survive and to thrive in this country. Of course, Capital Savings Bank gave African Americans a venue in which to learn about participating in the business of banking. It set out to reach all classes of the community so that everyone could learn the valuable economic lessons of being industrious, of course, in this case, sometimes seeking employment or establishing our own businesses, saving our money, and of course, purchasing or getting homes. And African-American churches and fraternal organizations really built further on the foundation by serving as a pooling place for the capital needed to open a bank. And that was sensitive to the needs of African-American community. So again, to say it was October the 17th, 1888, when Capital Savings Bank, the first bank organized and operated by African Americans. And quick, brothers, just say confidence in the bank grew. And by 1892, deposits were estimated over $300,000. Now, although Capital Savings Bank closed its doors in 1902, it really became a model for other Black-owned banks across the country. Between 1888 and 1934, it is estimated that 134 Black-owned banks were established. And from 1867 through 1917, the number of Black businesses increased from 4,000 to 50,000. And of course, a part of that was really due to Black-owned banks. Of course, the number of Black-owned banks has dwindled immensely over the years. today there are only 20 Black-owned banks in America. So I guess, brother, looking at this history of Capital Savings Bank and the history of Black-owned banks and how they benefited our community, and of course, seeing the number has dwindled today, just to try to, just want to get your take on just this history of Capital Savings Bank and Black-owned banks.
Indeed, brother. I think it's definitely something that we have to study and continue to understand. Super impressed by what was able to happen during the time frame with Capital Savings Bank. The thing that I read one of the things I was most impressed by were the numbers of Black businesses that started to bloom and blossom during this time frame. So being that it was in the DC area, that's a prime location. I also think that we have to realize that the banking system, especially during that time, is the financial focal point, not only for average citizens and individuals, but for the business community to be able to get loans, be able to do business, and to be able to really open up and finance themselves to get the ball rolling. And so you can see that by the booming of Black entrepreneurship that took place. The other thing I want to point out is that if you look at 1888, that's a little over 20 years out of enslavement. So 20 years outside of enslavement during this Reconstruction period, Black people had enough understanding, wherewithal, and enough ingenuity to be able to establish a Black banking system, which is nothing short of amazing, if you ask me. And so being able to set up the system, being able to provide a place where people could put their income, and even if it wasn't a large amount, it was significant to them. And it was enough to be able to start businesses, which we know then led to townships and cities. And so this was a very important measure. It was a very important thing that happened, and we can't underestimate it.
No, I think that's excellent insight into the significance of this history and the impact it had on the lives of Black people. And again, I just like to, build on what you just said, brother. The fact is that we're coming basically 20 years outside of the end of physical slavery for African-American people. And I think it just speaks to, again, the ingenuity, the determination, the insight, and the fact that we realized what we needed as a people. And of course, as you just highlighted, brother, the fact is that the banking system played a significant role because it gave us an opportunity to bring all collective finances together. It spoke of to us how we talked about churches and fraternal organizations, but it was a pooling resource there, but they would place those those dollars into Black-owned banks. And from there, then people had access to taking those dollars and establishing businesses or purchasing land. So just the fact that we saw the need of that kind of collective financial institution, and we utilized it in a way that would benefit us in establishing, and I'm glad you pointed out Black townships in many ways, because, we realized that we had to have a space and a place, and we needed all the institutions that go along with creating towns and cities, and the bank was one of those great important institutions for that establishment.
Absolutely. And when you really start to think about it, it lets us know how important it is for that time frame. But just the challenges of having them today also lets us know how important it is, because it wouldn't be so hard to get it established. It wouldn't be so much pushback if it wasn't as important as it is. And so we know that throughout the 1900s, after Capital Savings was closed, we know that even before it closed, others popped up. We know that as integration started to happen within society, the end of segregation, and even some before that, Black banking had dwindled to some degree. But one thing that you mentioned, that there are 20 across the nation that are still in existence today, I'm actually in Nashville right now, which has the oldest Black bank that has continuously been open, which is Citizens Bank right here in Nashville. So that's something to be acknowledged. Um, I know that One United is a bank that I believe they're based in California, but you can live anywhere in the country and establish a relationship with them. I know for my wife, I know she has a business and I helped her to establish a bank account with them, and it was strictly online. And so that's another one that's open to people. So I think that we have to consider these types of things more. And also, once again, like we mentioned last week, with the fintech companies and new types of banking with cryptocurrency, with new ways to look at our money and look at how we can store and invest, we have to always be open to new technology that might make it easier for us as a people to pool our resources. So we may not have to go through all the regulations that it takes to create a bank that's FDIC insured here in America, or a credit union. If there are other systems that are available to us without the same sort of loopholes and regulations, we got to consider that, because once again, that financial stronghold, that financial cornerstone is very important to Black entrepreneurship and Black business.
Excellent point. As a matter of fact, as you mentioned some of the Black-owned banks, I'm gonna pull up this slide here, just to kind of highlight some of the Black-owned banks today. They're saying that it's 20 Black-owned banks that exist today. And I think you just mentioned a few of them from the slide. But I would ask, brother, based on the history again, and looking at our current condition as a people, we realize that we still suffer, of course, racism from the financial institutions. And we realize that there's a greater opportunity for us when we collectively put together our resources and establish banks, or, as you just mentioned, brother, other kind of financial institutions which we can go to borrow from and, of course, deposit into. So I guess the question is, when you look at this history and you look at the current state of us as a people, do you see this as one of the important things we need to really start looking at? And that is, again, how to use our collective economic power.
Absolutely. I think it's vital to our future. And I think that right now, and this kind of goes along with the conversation we had on Sunday, I think we're past just the point where we want to see representation in society. We want to see Black faces. That's great. That's necessary. That's needed. However, that's not the apex. That's not the end all to be all. And I think that we have to get to a point where we're not just touting the achievements of a few, but we're really starting to look more into, as a collective and as a group, what can we be accomplishing, as opposed to having just a few famous faces who are making riches and wealth, and starting to see how that can be distributed. And when I say wealth, I'm not just talking about monetarily. I know Black people are really spending time to purchase land, farming, education, community healthcare. We have to look at all of these resources that kind of tie into wealth, and understand how we can take back more control over it as a people and as a community, and really be able to position ourselves to move forward as a unit, even if those are smaller units. You don't necessarily got to have 100,000 people to make a change. You can have a small group and it can grow over time. I just think that most of all, just having the mentality and the intention of pooling more of our resources. Like I said, and resources not just limited to money. However, money, once again, the finances are a lot of times the cornerstone in a capitalistic society. We need resources. We need financial resources to be able to grow and to move. And so having Black banks is important, but also making sure that the institutions are not just Black by face or by representation and ownership, but in action and in motivation. And once again, just the only one that I can really speak to is One United, because I definitely know that they offer
Right.
grant programs. I know that they offer community. If you have a community resource, they will supply money to help people get better financially educated. So I think that they do a good job, and I'm sure the others do too. I definitely know, once again, now that I'm here in Nashville, just understanding more about citizen savings that's here, I definitely know they do things in the community. My wife was explaining to me that they really had a strong, during the COVID PPP loans, they were able to help people get PPP loans and forgiveness for those loans. So I think we just have to continue to put our money where our mouth is. You know, that's one of the key things. If you look at other people's here in America historically, other communities have done the same thing. And I think
Yes.
even if it's now, like I said, as banking and financial things change with the economy and with technology, as long as we keep that thought that that's something that we need, is something that we could build. And like I said, it's going to be, it's a lot of more options now, and I believe that that's going to grow in the future. Like I said, with cryptocurrency, fintech, which is financial technology companies. I know that they're working to make it so that your credit score is not as important and critical as it has been in the past for being able to receive financial services. I know there are a lot of things that are changing, so we just have to stay on the cusp of the technology, what's happening, because those things can open up doors and windows for us as a people to take advantage of.
Excellent point, brother. Excellent. You know, and I would just like to add that to the idea of the wealth, because, you know, many times we, of course, talk about the economic wealth, the financial wealth, or the monetary wealth of us as a people. And when we talk about, you know, in numbers nowadays, of course, we can keep seeing the number like $1.3 trillion in spending power as a people. And, but the thing I really thought this highlights for me, one thing is that the wealth is really in the people, you know, because the idea is that, you know, when, of course, you go back to Capital Savings Bank, you're talking about in the late 1800s, we didn't necessarily have, you know, individually a lot of money, you know, but collectively we saw that we had wealth. And if we could have an institution in which to deposit that wealth, then we all could benefit from the collective wealth of us as a people. So I think history gives us an important example of first seeing that we are the wealth builders, and we just have to come in collectively and put together our resources. And of course, if we look at today, again, we're talking about $1.3 trillion. I mean, we should easily be able to come together collectively and establish Black-owned banks, because I agree with you 1,000%, brother, is that we don't need just representation. We need ownership and control over these institutions. And I hope that this history may inspire us to understand that we have all we need. We just have to come together and create and build it.
That's an excellent point, Babanda. The other thing I want to mention, you know, when we talk about wealth, if people are not aware, if you look at in America right now today, the wealth gap, meaning the amount of wealth of the median white family versus the median wealth of the wealth of the median Black family in America, it's about a 10 times gap. And people talk about how we need to close that gap and work on closing that gap. And one thing I've been thinking about, I don't know if it's so necessary for us to focus on closing that gap as much as it is just us improving our status and stature as far as wealth is. Not to chase another group, but just to get what we need and to be self-sufficient. Because whatever we can do to help us be closer to self-sufficiency, I think as a people, we have to give ourselves credit for our ability to jump the timeline and to move so quickly when we work together that it can be astronomical. And I think if you look at, you know, we always talk about Black Wall Street. One of the things about that area is that they were able to, in just a few years, 10, 15 years, create something that was so profitable, so self-sustaining, Once again, not far removed from enslavement, and they were able to surpass the white communities in that area who had much more of a head start because they were self-sufficient and enclosed and encapsulated in their own universe, and they kept their funds circulating. So if we take that as an example, I think mentally, if we realize that we don't have to necessarily chase that wealth gap per se, we just have to make sure that we get to a point where our wealth is enough to where we can pool our resources for self-sufficiency, and from there, the sky's the limit. And so I think that's what we have to start to strive to look at. What level is necessary for families to have something for themselves, and then be able to pool resources so that we can see that astronomical growth that can take place and happen because of that.
But I think that's a very insightful perspective. And I mean, as you were just saying that, I really started to see that, maybe we have to reevaluate when we start talking about this wealth gap, and understanding again that we have what we need if we can collectively bring it together and build on what we have. Because I agree 1000% again, brothers, that too often we're trying to chase someone else. We're trying to, as they say, what's the term when they say you're trying to basically move into someone else's space, or you trying to, build
them at their game.
Yeah, exactly. So the idea, I think, is really that taking what you just said, brother, in the example of Black Wall Street, of Black-owned banks, just taking the example that, hey, we was, I think, a lot more accomplished in many ways, and a lot more profitable, and a lot more in control of our communities when we just took the basic of what we had and, saw the importance of sharing it with each other. At that time, of course, during segregation, it was more of a forced condition and situation. But the fact is, if we have the mindset of taking the importance of being in unity and working together, not being forced, but doing it as a sense of self-determination and a need for our survival, we could be very profitable beyond what we are right now. And it won't be based upon any kind of wealth gap. It'll just be based upon the fact that we are taking what resources we have and building the very best life we can build.
Indeed. And just taking it back once again I've been thinking a lot since our Sunday conversation just about the illusion of inclusion. One of the examples that we had was the Negro League. That's an excellent picture, in my opinion, because it sounds like just sports, Black baseball teams coming together. But once again, what we proved in that presentation is that not only was it a Black league that generated income, there were Black businesses, ancillary businesses that supported it, from transportation to restaurants to hotels. And it was a lot of working. It was a lot of businesses around that one thing that supported it and helped create an economy. And I think we should look at that, because another good example, I was just watching an interview with Deion Sanders. And right now he's a coach at a HBCU in Mississippi, Jackson, I believe.
Yeah.
And so what they were saying, this was a 60 Minutes interview, and one thing they pointed out is how much he changed the school just by being there. He came in, the facilities were not comparable to other colleges. They got Walmart to redo the field, the practice field, so they had a place to practice. And so basically what they were saying is that how he came in there, he started using his connections and his resources and his celebrity to bring attention not only to the school, but the league in that conference. And on top of that, they've been winning. And the last year, the top recruit in the nation agreed to come. And so that helps. And that's what I'm saying. You don't necessarily need, it wasn't because he was going to get the top recruit didn't go there because he was going to get more notoriety, it was a better move. And I think if we as a people start realizing that if some of our, if we want to call our greatest, our more financially endowed individual people started coming together and helping reach down a little bit more, or putting themselves around people that may not be as established, it could really do a lot. And so Jackson State has turned around just by Deion Sanders coming there. And I think that if we use sports or entertainment or some facility that we have a lot of influence in, and just say, hey, I'm gonna maybe not accept as much money individually and just get enough where I'll be okay, and work together and build something, people will come and attract to it. And once again, I also think another good example is the Tyler Perry Studios. I mean, it's a lot of caterers, film crews, a lot of people can benefit from him having that estate or that compound, basically like a city almost. If we use those types of models, I think that we'll be better off as a people, just how to pool the resources. So looking at Black economic or financial institutions and things like that, I think is important. And once again, maybe using the technology that's coming out and available, just using those models, just pooling the resources, you know, not just, and like you said, not just the money, but the people, because sometimes people and the attention can garner far more than what we may believe. That sometimes can be the thing, the straw to break the camel back, or the one thing that helps us galvanize more. Just a few notable people taking a risk or a change in a positive way could really change a lot. So I really, when I was listening to Coach Prime, and I was really in admiration, and I saw it as a lesson, and it made me start thinking, how could this be used in a broader sense? Because what he's doing is amazing. And I'm not a sports fan in much of a regard, in all honesty. However, I recognize what he did, and I see the movement.
No doubt. Well, brother, you know, the time goes quickly, but you know, it don't take a lot of time I think, to bring together information and just to share insight that I think could carry us a lot further than the time we have just allotted. And I think the conversation today, this morning, has been tremendous, brother. Just the fact that looking at the history of Capital Savings Bank and then expanding that conversation out in many ways, I think talking about Black-owned institutions and the influence that we can have as, you know, if it's celebrities, people who, as you say, endowed with the finances, but if we can collectively come together and take control and ownership of our institutions and our community, we would truly see the wealth of us as a people growing tremendously. So I think this morning has been great, brother. So is there any last closing comments that you have?
No, brother, I think we touched on a lot. And I mean, the only thing I'll close out with is, you know, in Western society, the individual is raised up, the individual achievement. But from the East and from where we're from and our origins as a people, the collective had always been the focus. It wasn't the individual achievements, it was the collective, what we did as a group. And I think if we continue to keep that mentality, we will be all right.
Excellent point, brother. I think that's a good ending note. So family, thank y'all for being with us on this, you know, Black Conversation Tuesday morning. And brother, can you tell the people how they can reach out and, you know, reach out to us and continue to follow us? Absolutely.
So you can always get more information about who we are, what we provide at melaneyesmedia.com, MELANEYES.com. And then you can also subscribe to our YouTube channel. The link is at the bottom of this video, whether you're on YouTube or whether you're joining us from Zoom. So peace and blessings, family. See you next week.
All right. Peace and blessings, family. Hotel.